Police officer Darren Wilson was carrying more than just his gun on the day that he was shot and killed Michael Brown. So many people want to know, why didn't he grab something other than the gun to fight the unarmed teen? Some also ask, why didn't he use a taser? Wilson says he wasn't carrying one at the time, and there's a limited supply at the Ferguson PD. Also said it's not the most comfortable thing and that there wasn't enough room in the car where he had the encounter with Mr. Brown. Wilson was carrying mace but didn't use it. He said he needed his left hand to block Brown and that Brown's hands would have blocked spray. Wilson said that if any of that got on me, I would have been out of the game. I wear contacts. If that touches any part of my eyes, then I can't see at all. He also had an expandable baton, but chose not to use that as well, saying he couldn't reach it and couldn't expand the baton in the cart. Now, police have been known to use flashlights as weapon. And these all coming under the question is, why not use the gun? He had one but didn't use it, saying he couldn't reach it and that there wasn't enough room in the car for it to be effective. So with all that as the backdrop, we do know that he did use his gun, and he used the .40 caliber pistol to shoot Brown. The gun held 14 rounds and he fired 12 shots at Brown, hitting him, we believe, 6 times. All right. We've seen in a lot of these cases, Nick, the questions of, did the police follow the right protocols? My first question is body cams. Do we agree where it might have been a debate a year ago? Now it just makes more sense for all involved that if you have something in living technicolor, there's not a lot of guesstimate of the he said, she said. You can see it for yourself.
3 things you can't hide in life: the sun, the moon, and the truth. Have body cams.
Okay. The second thing is it practical that officers can ride with partners, not some of the time or usually, but almost all the time?
I think it's great, but you know, once again, it goes to budgetary restraints in the community. I think all police officers, you know, there's a great formula, the way one police officer acts in a police car, the way 2 police officers, which is the perfect combination, and then as we saw, let's say in Abdul Diallo, when you have 4 police officers in a car.
Right, but it's not practical.
Right.
I mean, in Rockland, and what you have one cop, and that's the way it's always going to be. I mean, Richard, you got to change the dynamic. If you want people to have confidence in the system, then you got to be fair with them. This was not a fair process from day one.
Well, you know what's funny, Dom? Think of it this way. We were talking this morning, Andrew and I, at a total meeting. Imagine it's Piermont, you know, Rockland. So pick up. If there's a report that goes in about some convenience store that was knocked off, or some guy ran off with it, how long would it be till they'd be multiple squad cars? Especially if the guy looked like you. I'm asking, right?
Right.
This was...
Or if the guy looks like me, you know what's going to happen.
So my only point is, one squad car got there after he had already answered another call, and he wasn't even there to apprehend. Part of me, Nick, from a process standpoint,
What does this have to do with the facts as they present them? What we're doing is saying all the ancillary features that come across here just don't seem to play right. The fact is, the instant matter, when that officer makes the conclusion that no reasonable and prudent person would be attacking him in the police car just for asking him a question, and that when he confronts the officer, strikes the officer, and the officer pulls his gun out, the first shot goes into the door, his gun then jams. That officer says that his state of mind there is he was in imminent danger of his life. I believe it. The grand jury believes it.
Okay, wait, he got out of the car, though, right?
That's right.
No, he got out of the car and went on foot after Brown.
Right.
Now,
Brown turns, it comes at him.
There's conflicting versions, but let's go with the version that he turned around and went at him. My point is, he's unarmed, he's been shot. Does he need, is it reasonable, Nick, that he's gonna end up dead?
You're right about that. There is some question about what happened. And what are those questions about what happened? The person who said that he went down on his knees and put his hands up? I think that the witnesses that saw him return to the police, to come at the police officer, were clear. They're witnesses, and there were people of color. Those people who witnessed that and made those statements were in total conformity with what the officer said, independent of hearing them, and what the medical examiner said.
I love you, but that's not true. That's not true. See, that's what happens when you got a prosecutor that's stacking the deck. This prosecutor discredited his own witnesses. Because he took pieces of what they had to say to prove Officer Wilson as not guilty.
But Dominic, and you know, I love you too.
Right,
we always get along, even though we fight on air.
Right.
But when we look at it, you know, this was extraordinary. The Attorney General of the United States, the chief law enforcement officer of the land, he has an independent pathologist come in. He bullies, if you know, 100 FBI agents there, and they marry up with the County of St. Louis detectives.
They did not marry with them. That's what the prosecutor wants us to believe.
Right.
The Justice Department has told us their investigation is still pending. So Holder separated himself today from this prosecutor.
Okay, well,
But
I'm just going by what the press conference said.
Okay, okay.
But guys, what we're doing is, and my fault, okay?
Right.
But look at the stories that have dominated our headlines, okay? Going up a stairwell in Brooklyn, okay? Two people leave an apartment. They're coming down a dimly lit stairwell. Officer with a gun drawn already, no safety on, shoots and kills the guy. Second story, we see obviously what's gone on in Staten Island in living color. The guy had loose cigarettes here, and he ends up dead on the ground. Again, I know nobody intended to kill him. My point, Nick, is it an issue of training, or should we, the public, say, if the cops didn't intend to do it, the benefit of the doubt always goes to the police, because in the end, they're human? What should the standard or the expectation of the general public be for these?
We always hold police to a higher standard. That's number one.
But do we?
Yes, we do. And we should have, you know what? We should recruit more minorities from the community. We should be standing
No, but
in
Nick,
front
state
of
the standard.
Right.
What standard should we expect on that stairwell in Brooklyn or on that
the
sidewalk in
same
Staten Island?
standard that we expected in Detroit when somebody shot through a door without looking outside the house, and he strikes an African-American woman and kills her, and he goes to prison. The same standard in the case in Maryland, where an African-American New Jersey detective was confronted by unarmed white skinheads with his wife and kids in the car, and he was acquitted. So those are the standards that we apply, and those are called the standards of true justice, the verdict.
Nick, you're right. We should hold, but that's going to be ineffective. What you want and should demand is people hold themselves to a standard. I mean, that's where you're trying to get to. If you can get an individual to, at that moment, what is morally right, and people are, well, that's utopia. No, it's not. You know, we do it every day. Common folk hold themselves to a standard every day.
Okay, but Pastor, let's go to that stairwell again. The officer in question, I'll ascribe good motives to him. He didn't go out that morning. Scared rookie, paired with another rookie. There's another genius move. But anyway, they're going up a stairwell. He's got his gun drawn. He doesn't want to kill anybody, but he shoots a guy for doing nothing wrong. None of their morality was wrong that day, but there was no judgment exercised. Now, my point is, if Andrew's going up that same stairwell, he lives in the apartment, he's nervous, and he's got his registered gun on him, and he shoots a guy because he comes out. Andrew doesn't have 72 hours to figure out what his story is. Andrew doesn't get to have an attorney appointed by the PBA for him. Andrew doesn't get to have those same things afforded to him. Now, I feel bad for the Ricky cop who shot him, but if it's your brother that was shot dead in that stairwell for the crime of coming down.
We're adding emotion to it. Let the facts talk for themselves.
But my point, Nick, is you tell me. Tell me what the expectation should be.
The fact is the state of mind. If the state of mind is if you are trained for these situations more than the average Joe, and then you go in there and training goes out the window and fear takes over. You just said two rookies. We just had that on Jamaica Avenue, two rookies together. I spoke to the commanding officer, and they're changing. The 103rd Precinct is partnering rookies up with veterans, so people with hatchets don't walk. In this climate we have today, that does happen. People with state of minds will go, because I just say, what person would take a hatchet and swing at a cop?
But I agree with you, Reverend, and we accept that there, so we have to accept the fact here with Police Officer Wilson, what was his state of mind, and his state of mind was eminent fear.
We don't have to accept it because nobody's a fool. And as Attorney Crump argued today, a first-year law student would have did a better job of presenting that case to the grand jury. How do you not cross-examine the cop that did the shooting? Come on. You sit up there and let him talk for 4 hours and don't question it? Don't ask him any questions?
They can't.
Okay, but you don't match up the physical evidence with what's coming out of his mouth? Officer, if you were punched in your face, where are the hard bruises on your face? A simple question.
Again, Dominic, I understand the passion involved in this, but the fact is, Dominic, you have to overcome what reasonable and prudent person. A normal person, you're sitting in a police car and a person acts in an aggressive, challenging, threatening manner.
I agree
comes
with you.
at you.
Any reasonable person would
Right.
say the first shootings were justified.
Right.
But when he's standing several feet away from you and you still continue
Dominic,
to fire,
maybe-
that's the problem.
Maybe
but
you
Richard,
and I are the only
listen,
people here who remember the
I
Bumpers
respect you.
case.
I
Okay?
remember that well.
Right.
But here's my point. I have addressed 4 police classes on exactly what you're talking about. Vertical patrols, and the commissioner brought me in to give them the black perspective about, and he would call it the cold shower, Richard. And these are the things that we talked about, the vertical patrols. In terms of, in fairness to the police officers, I would be scared too. I'm trying to answer the question you originally asked that none of us wanted to answer. The perception is black people are committing the crime. The perception is black people are the ones that will hurt you.
Right.
So when
I agree with that
so
100%.
if you're in a white
Right.
project,
But that doesn't
if
deal
you're
with
in
the
a
police,
but
that
nobody's
deals with
saying it, so I'm
society.
going to say
Yeah.
it.
Police
If you're
are part of
if
society.
you're in a
Right.
white housing
That's what we
project,
should be
the
addressing.
perception
Right.
is this person is not going to, quote, if you will, quote unquote, act like an animal. I don't have to worry about being shot here. But if you're in the middle of Red Hook, Brooklyn, or one of these projects, and you're on a vertical patrol, and because of the housing authority, the lights don't work, it's dark as hell, you can't see anything, you shouldn't have your gun drawn, but you do, accidents happen.
Well, then the question is, if
agree.
if you say that's part of society, then what's the screening process to make sure people who come on this job
That's
with
the
the ultimate
problem.
power
That's the problem.
to take your life are not skewed by that? Can that
That's the
happen?
problem.
Remember, the police officer has the ultimate power, Reverend.
Well, I have the ultimate power, at least on this set for a second. And I promised the phone callers, and they've been jammed. Phone lines have been jammed. If I can get it out here. So when we come back, we're going to bring them all in here. Stay with us. We're right back.